Okay, now I'm on. We don't have student council reps tonight, so we'll just skip over that. I'm sure there's lots of exciting things happening at the high school, though.
We'll be here in December to fill you in.
Okay, perfect. Board committee updates. We did not have any committee meetings this past month, so there are no board committee updates. Did anybody meet with a district-wide committee? None that I know of. No? Okay. Your upcoming board dates are in the agenda. Should you have any questions about those? We'll move on to consent agenda. If anyone has any questions about minutes, about schedule of bills, or about the human resources report that had some resignations, some retirements, and some new hires. Does anybody have any questions? We're all good? Okay, I will, sorry, here we go. I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda, but I would like to remove bills, schedule of bills 11.1 and approve, I will make a motion to approve the rest.
I'll second.
And we'll do a roll call, Heidi.
Starting with Brian.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Kirsten.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Nicole.
Aye.
Stephanie.
Aye.
Melissa.
Aye.
Yvonne.
Aye.
And Karen.
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you.
And then we'll entertain a motion for schedule of bills 11.1.
So moved.
I'll second.
And roll call, Heidi.
Elisa.
Aye.
Yvonne.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Sarah.
Abstain?
Kirsten.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Nicole.
Aye.
And Stephanie.
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you.
And then we will move on to the superintendent report. Michael.
Yes, thank you. First of all, short week of school, so enjoy Thanksgiving. Just one more day. We're halfway through the week, so I had a chance to be at one building today, but we'll be at the rest of them, hopefully checking in tomorrow. But short week, but we have lots to celebrate and be thankful for. One thing being our gifts and grant donation reports. A new process we've built the last few months is to bring these to you just to celebrate some of the great things that people are donating to our district. I believe we have one group here tonight that will showcase. But first and foremost, before we get to that group, I want to showcase our Aurora Medical Center that made a donation to all 3 of our elementary schools. And a variety of donations, whether it was notebooks or folders. I want to shout out Aurora Medical Center for making those donations for us. Also a recognition of Engine Power Inc. They provided quite an extensive donation as it related to a value of $21,600 in engines. I was there the day that the kids got to unwrap these brand new beautiful engines that had never been taken apart yet. I think they've started to take them apart and we'll continue to put them back together, but really a great opportunity and a huge shout out to our team for writing that grant and receiving that donation. We also have a donation from Dunwoody Elementary Parent Group that has been working to raise funds for a new basketball hoop. I believe next month we'll bring forward the donation of who installed it, I think, and has it been installed yet, Elise? Is it?
It has not been installed yet.
So thank you to our parent groups that put forth a lot of effort to raise funds, to put forth playground equipment. So a shout out to our Dunwoody group and thank them for their donations. And then our last donation is for our music program, and it comes from, let me pull up the group here. Sorry. From B3, $1,000 towards a bass drum. And we have the donors here tonight as well as our band director from the middle school, if they want to come up briefly and talk a little bit about the donation, and we can publicly acknowledge and thank them. So.
We have to do the mic.
Yep, turn the mic on.
Okay. It's the green light. Thanks. I'm new here. Hello, everybody. My name is Danny Pfeiffer, and this is Pam Nakud, and we are here representing B3. B3, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. And Mr. Heckbarth.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Hackbarth. You've seen me before. I have a feeling you'll probably be seeing me a lot in general. We tend to get a lot of donations, and I'm the band director at TJ.
Very good. So we are a local nonprofit, and we organize events and activities that promote physical activity and volunteerism. We began in 2015, and we have just about 100 members. We have donated to date over $250,000 back to the community. Our top recipients include Ozaki Food Alliance, the Port Washington Scholarship Fund, and Advocates of Ozaukee County. And we also make many smaller donations, including bikes that we donated to 2 teens in our district who needed help with transportation. I think those recommendations came via staff members. So our drum donation is unique to us because it does not involve physical activity. It involves something a lot of us aren't good at in our group, and that is music. But here's why we donated the drum. Our drum donation to the middle school band program is in memory of Mike Kissero, who passed away last year. He graduated from Port in 1982 and received a degree in fine arts from UW-Milwaukee. He was an artist and a musician, and he played drums nearly his entire life. But we know him best as our spirited bike mechanic who worked at Zuzu Pedals for many years. The drum is an example, he was a big supporter of our group, and we appreciate all the help he gave us over those years when we needed our bikes fixed. But the drum is an example of our group paying it forward to others and hopefully inspiring future acts of kindness within our community. And I have to say, my sister Nikki was a big help in coordinating this, and she reached out to Mr. Hackbarth and said, we have this $1,000 to donate, and you get to choose an instrument, and he picked a drum. So I think that was very fitting and very nice. We would like to continue to be a resource. This is just a PSA for everybody here. For kids in the community, we can make smaller donations or maybe fundraise for something bigger. So if you have any staff members, teachers, counselors who identify kids in need, those kids that kind of maybe fly under the radar, and you're like, hey, this kid would really use a bike to get to work, I don't know where to go, we can be that resource for you. So just letting you know we are here to help. Thank you.
And yeah, just a little bit about the drum that we got. It was kind of like a special case. So B3, of course, offered the $1,000, and Nikki was the one that initially reached out to me to see how we could do that. It was actually originally for the music department as a whole, but the middle school has been kind of we're kind of in this process of replacing things and so on and so forth, and the bass drum's been on my list for a while, and so when they said that $1,000, I was like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity. Maybe the district could even match this amount, so I reached out to Mel, and the district was able to kind of cover the rest of the amount of the drum on top of what B3 donated. So I'm just eternally grateful from B3 and the district for helping us out with that. We got the drum on a really special deal, I guess. I went and picked it up at the UW, or not the UW, the Music Educators Conference in Madison a couple of weeks ago. I was able to take the food truck, went and got it, and we got it a $4,000 drum for a little over $1,700 because it was only used for like 2 days. But it was basically brand new then. And so it's a beautiful drum. If you go on our Facebook page, you can see I did like an A/B test with it. So we took the old one, which was sort of honestly held together with nails in some places. And you can see that versus the new one that just has significantly more resonance to it. And like, even though our kids are only going to be using it in a performance setting, maybe once or twice a year, being able to practice on it every day has already made a huge difference in the ensemble on a daily basis. So it is something that we use every day, and we're super happy that we got to get that and all that. So thank you so much to B3 again, and thank you to the district as well for helping us out with that. So
Very good.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here tonight. In continuing with my superintendent's report, also continuing with music achievements. So both the high school and the middle school have been sending me their updates and wanting an opportunity to showcase these students. So just quickly, I'd like to congratulate and acknowledge Simon Gilhooly, a current Port Washington High School freshman, for being selected to participate in Wisconsin Music Educators Middle School Honors Choir in October. Also, a congratulations to the following TJ Middle School students. Last month, we acknowledged our high school students for participating in the WCDA Middle Level All-Star Choir and Children's All-State Choir in January. These students will be Middle Level All-State Choir Nick Krieg, Braden Wilson Ford, Nora Yankee, and Gillian Grohall. Our Children's Choir All-State Choir will be Samantha Mitchell, Mari Stryker, Quinn Oswegen, Sophia Peringer, Maria Schudis, Reagan Klopp, Zachary Duarte, and Lauren Camp. And then earlier this month, we also had 3 TJ Middle School students participate in the UW-Milwaukee Middle Level Honor Band. Zoe Langel, a 7th grade student, Anna Seibert, 7th grade student, and Natalie Rickner, an 8th grade student. They had a blast learning to play 5 pieces of music in the span of about 10 hours of rehearsals. So continuing to showcase the arts and the opportunities our students have, and then the opportunities our teachers are pushing our students to have. So thank you for that. And then, as we update, and as we launched our basketball season last Friday, that means we finished our fall season. So I'll invite John to come up and talk through the fall sports update, and what we accomplished this fall.
Alrighty, good evening, thanks for having me. It was an exciting fall season. This is new to give updates for the season. So first off, I just want to start off, our kids did a great, outstanding job all fall, all of our kids. A lot of the names that I'm going to announce here talk about our kids that got recognized for all conference or did some great significant things, but it's important to mention that all of our kids had an outstanding year and did some tremendous things. I want to start off with boys volleyball. There's their first year within a WIAA sport within their conference. They didn't have any players that got recognized, but ended up being about 500 overall with a 12-13 record, and they did really, really, really well and improved the entire year as they're going on. First year coach Doug Niemeyer was taking over that program. Our girls cross country had an outstanding season. Parker Allen and Ellie Knepfel qualified for the state meet. Parker finished 17th overall, and Ellie finished 55th overall. Parker was named first team all-conference. Ellie was named second team all-conference. The boys cross-country team had a tremendous year as well, finished 6th overall at team state. The group of the team state consisted of Alex Antwater, Jamison Coble, Alexa Luna, John Dort, Peter Lotz, Connor, Zanukis, and Ezra Meeks. Alex finished 6th overall at state. He was first team all-conference, and then I just was told he was voted by the Coaches Association from the state as an All-American. This is the first time that they've done that, so congratulations to him. Jameson and Pete were also honorable mention, all-conference. Our boys soccer team had a great year. Second-year coach Mark Burmish did an outstanding job, finishing their season 8-12 overall in a really competitive North Shore Conference, and then went on to win one round in the playoffs and then lose in the second. They had one player that was second team all-conference, that was Angel Ramirez, and then George Pastor was an honorable mention at goalie. Our girls swim team had a great year. Danny was just up here. I just want to make a point. She does an incredible job, and really our numbers have increased every year ever since she's taken over the program. The girls love it and compete in a really tough North Shore Conference as well. The girls had 2 girls break into the top 10 all-time records. These records have been held since 1985. Lily, you want to read these? You should. It's your girls. You should read these.
Okay, it's very exciting because these records are like over 30 years old. So Lily Kerbal is 8th place now overall in 100 back, and Layla Henschel broke in to the top 10, and she is now 10th in the 100 breaststroke. And then at sectionals, we also had 5 girls placed in the top 10. Layla was our highest placing person in the breaststroke with 6th place. We had freshman Anna Neisowitz in the 100 fly, placed 8th. Eden Struby in the 100 free, 9th. Lily Kerbal in the 100 back, 9th. And then we had a diver, Maddie Melismo, in her first year, placed 9th in diving. So great season overall.
A lot of young, upcoming, pretty good swimmers, so we're really excited about that. Our girls volleyball finished 15-18 overall. They won their opening round in the playoffs and then lost the second one. They had one individual, Nora Moreau, who finished second team all-conference. Our football team had a great year. We finished 8-3 overall, took second in the East Central Conference, then lost in Level 2 playoffs to Green Bay Notre Dame, who went on to win the state championship. We had a great year, a ton of individual awards. All-conference first team, Josh Arnold, Hewitt Decker. First team defense, Josh Arnold, Hewitt Decker, Sam Paston, Garrett Kozinski, Isaiah Shefkin. The second team all-conference, Caleb Runkle, Kia Sullivan. All-conference honorable mention, Logan Walker, Ashton Steiner, Colton Struckman, Landon Jankowski, Jaden Lathrop, and Bear White. A couple other kids had lineman of the year, which was Hewitt Decker, and then also Isaiah Shefflin had linebacker of the year. We had 4 kids that got pushed on to all region, and that was Garrett, Isaiah Shefflin, Hewitt Decker, and Sam Paston. So overall, a tremendous fall season for our kids. And we are well on our way. Like you mentioned, the girls' basketball on Friday, boys' basketball participates up in Sheboygan this coming holiday weekend in their tournament, in the Thanksgiving tournament. The wrestling team has started, gymnastics has started, should be a great winter season. Okay.
Thank you. No rest from one season to the next, so
No
appreciate the
rest.
update. Thank you.
Yep.
Another update for you, excited to share, we are state champs as it relates to esports in the specific game of Overwatch. I've learned a lot about esports, specifically in the last few weeks. Jeff Wojcik, our coach, has kept me up to date, but certainly want to showcase these students. They will be coming to us in December with their trophy and their medals. Because of esports being, we competed here against someone from across the state. They weren't necessarily at Madison like we think of other sports, but they will be receiving their trophy and medals in the mail. Those students are Trinity Waning, Crystal Stacy, Matt Hansen, Tommy Wilcox, Eugene Nachchen, Chase McCoy Jackson, and Carson Wimmer. They also put their video gamer names that you can find in the board update as well. That is what they're known across the state, but here we know them as state champions. This is the first time we've had a state champion in esports. Really exciting. As we think about esports, it has changed since I was a kid. I think my grandfather said, you can't play video games, that doesn't, but now you can get a scholarship for video games. So huge shout out to these kids for winning a state title. And then finally, for my superintendent update, just spring elections, filing deadlines. Yes, believe it or not, we're talking about spring. So those filing deadlines, we have 3 board members that are running for re-election or up for re-election. So just as an update, if you are interested, certainly filing papers at district office, Heidi and I can help you with that. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. Exciting stuff. Lots to be proud of here. So we'll move to any public comments this evening. Seeing none, we will move on to superintendent items and our report on our survey data results.
So we have Rob Denise from School Perceptions with us, as well as Clint from Ray. And so will tell us.
Thank you.
So we've seen and met Rob virtually. This is his chance to be in person to showcase our slides. Let me pull them up. Sorry for the delay. And I will turn it over to Rob to talk through the slides and the presentation and the data we've collected on our school perception survey.
All right, so I'm going to go through a few slides and then I'll do some introductions. But let me talk a little bit about how the report is set up. I'll spend the least amount of time on blue slides because there's nothing new there. It's either going to briefly introduce who we are. Much of the survey itself, actually all of the survey itself, is also in this report. Maybe less important for tonight, but it is handy when you're scratching your head in a couple of weeks and think, how did we word that? Or did we talk about that? Everything that was in your survey is in this report itself. Kind of yellow on my screen, but kind of the greenish second from the left is the respondent information. So who took the survey, how old were they, where do they live, and so on. The most important part of your report is in green. That's the results and analysis, and then certainly leave some time at the end for wrap-up and questions. So this is not the first time we've worked with Port Washington, certainly. We've done, I think this is the 3rd community survey in the last 10-ish years or so. Again, like you heard Michael say, my name is Rob Demise. I serve as the Vice President of Research at School Perceptions. We got started in 2002, and we've never changed our mission once. We want to make sure that educational leaders like yourselves are able to gather, organize, and use data to make strategic decisions. And really the point of this slide is just to let you know that this isn't our first rodeo. Over 3 million surveys collected, and we worked with north of 1,000 school districts who are all doing what you have been doing, what you are doing, what you will be doing, which is that long-term strategic planning and referendum planning process. So let's talk a little bit about you. Your survey deadline was October 30th, so about a month ago now, so the survey data really quieted down. Sometimes we do get a bin or so of surveys in from USPS that are postmarked on time, but just take a little time to filter through and come to us. So all the data that we have has been honored here. You landed just shy of 2,000 respondents, which ultimately led you to a fantastic response rate. About 1/4 of folks who were sent the survey took it, so 24% response rate. That's great. And your margin of error then, if you round, figure about 2.25% or so. Now, unfortunately, that's a unfortunate name of a statistic term because you can't do anything about it. The margin of error is purely how many people are at your disposal to survey. So when we work in very large communities, the Green Bays, the Wauwatoses, the La Crosses of the world, their margin of error is very tight. When we work in the Drummonds of the world and the Goodman Armstrongs of the world, it's very, very wide. Here, being relatively large as far as Wisconsin goes, your margin of error is fairly tight at just over 2%, but it is both up and down, plus or minus 2.25% or so. In terms of who took your survey then, the first place we go is age. And what I want to see here is what I do see. So my goal here is to see a bit of a broken bell curve. My eyes always go up top, 65 plus. I really want to make sure that we're getting good representation from senior citizens because they're going to be very loyal voters. They will be there on election day. And you're actually overrepresented in your 65 plus for your survey compared to the proportion of folks in the community. And that's not a bad place to be. So more specifically, of the folks who took your survey, just under 1/3 identified that they were 65 plus. Within the community itself, within the school district, so not just the city of Port Washington, but within your entire survey, or excuse me, the entire district boundaries, about 18.8% is 65 plus. Now again, that's a good thing because not all of these groups will vote in the same proportion, and 65 plus are also overrepresented on election day. So it's good to have a good representation from their group because of their loyalty to voting on election day. The other place that I would expect to see some longer bars is 35 to 54. Staff and parents, you're getting a lot of representation in those age groups from those two groups. That's not a bad thing. I'd be worried if staff and parents weren't taking a school survey. So the fact that you're a little overrepresented there as well is pretty normal. Next up then, it says, is your primary residence in the district? Now, a good question here would be, well, why would you send it to people who don't live here? And that is a good question. So of the folks who either said not sure or no, we're going to remove them because they could be staff who commute in from elsewhere. Obviously, you live in a very commutable area. There's no requirement for staff to live here, but even though they don't live here, they could be quite influential, especially if they're long tenured teachers that everybody knows. But if they don't live here, then we want to filter them out because they can't vote here. Same with any folks who choose to open and roll into the district. By definition, they don't live here, or they wouldn't need to open and roll in. If I own land or I own property, maybe I'm an Airbnb owner or something like that, and I own the property, but it's not my primary residence, I may get the survey. But again, if I don't live here, then we're going to filter those folks out and only focus on the 93% that said yes, because they are the ones, obviously, that get to control an election within your district's boundaries. Next up then, in which municipality do you live? Almost exactly 2/3 are from the city of Port Washington, a little under 1 in 5 from the village of Saukville, 1 in 10 from the town of Port Washington, and then 3% apiece from the town of Grafton and the town of Saukville. And then second to last, I think here, third to last. 2 questions that will get us to 3 really key subgroups that we're going to spend a lot of time on as we go through the survey results. We're going to isolate staff and see how they feel. We will isolate parents and see how they feel about the survey. But then really importantly, because they're the biggest group, the no, the non-parents, non-staff, and we're going to color code those and spend some more time talking about those in just a bit. But these 2 questions are how we'll get to those 3 subgroups in just a few moments. If you're curious how different parents at different school buildings are feeling, this question is how we disaggregate that. Unsurprisingly, most go to the middle and high school or have kiddos there because you're split among 3 elementary schools, but obviously everybody at some point is going to roll up to the middle or high school. And reminder that obviously I could have more than one kiddo enrolled in the district, so they don't add up to 100, nor should they in this case. Then, here on a blue slide, so again, this is one of those examples where nothing new here, this was word for word what was in your survey. So in general, the COC and the Board of Education identified the following updates to address the most pressing maintenance needs at Dunwoody, Lincoln, the middle school, and the high school, and then we'll separate and talk about Saukville specifically in just a moment. But across those 4 schools, roof sections, ADA accessibility, some of the exterior work, HVAC equipment, playgrounds, generators, and so on. And then ask the question. Do you support including the district-wide facility improvements, i.e., what was just on the previous slide, in the next phase of the facility plan? A majority of all the key subgroups leaned towards yes here. So on the far left, that kind of navy color, 8 and 10 of your staff said they support including those projects in the next phase. Exactly 2/3 of parents, 67%, support those projects in the next phase of the facility plan. And then finally, the non-parents, non-staff, the biggest group in the community, just over majority, 51%, support those projects being included in the facility plan, the next phase. Yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify, I think in one of the next slides, you talk about resident staff, but this staff is all staff, right? Or is it only resident staff as well?
Good question. I did do residents here as well because we're gonna, good question. So because this culminates in a how much would you support in a referendum, I did isolate this to residents only.
Okay,
Good
great,
question,
thank
yeah.
you.
In terms of the no, 6% of staff said no, 15% of parents. Just under 1/3 of non-parents, non-staff said no to including this in the next phase of the facility plan. That's about average. In general, about 1/4 to 1/3 of non-parents, non-staff are going to be in that no camp. So you're right there kind of on what I would expect it to be. And then you have some not sures. At this point in the survey, the total amount it would cost taxpayers wasn't there yet. So I think some of those not sures are, well, how much exactly is this going to cost me? And what part of this is part of the total plan? But that's what we'll get to in just a moment. What I take away from this slide, a majority of all the key subgroups are over 50%. Then Saukville specifically. So here, talked about the building challenges themselves, where it's located. So the COC and the board believing that, do not believe that a further investment in this facility is a smart use of the community's tax dollars. Therefore, exploration of a new Saukville Elementary with some of the big ticket items. Obviously not everything a new school would include, but some of those big ticket items listed here. And that at the time of printing, looking to a specific location within the village of Saukville or adjacent to the village boundaries. Same setup. The question read, do you support replacing Saukville Elementary in the next phase of the facility plan? Almost the exact same data for staff. 8 and 10 said yes. 60% of parents said yes. And here, while it's not majority, we can call it a plurality. A plurality, 48% of non-parents, non-staff support replacing Saukville Elementary. So while it's not majority, my takeaway from this slide is among all the subgroups, yes does beat no. Yeah.
Can I ask you a
Yeah, absolutely.
question? Sorry. Of those not sure, in your experience, how do they break when it gets put on a referendum?
Yeah, great. I'm going to revisit it in like 10 seconds. I will get there, I promise. Then, though, we had to ask the final question. So there's a couple of numbers that were going on here. One, what number am I going to see in a ballot? Because the tax impact is not. It's only that total number, the total amount of bonds you would need to take out. So $66.7 million, we want to get that number out. So the question read, would you support a $66.7 million referendum to pay for the next phase of the facility plan? Once again, just staff, and just those staff who are residents. Held pretty steady. 77% of staff said yes to supporting the whole enchilada. Parents, once again, they've stayed pretty steady as well. Just under 2/3 said yes to the referendum plan as described. And here, this data stayed pretty similar as well. This is your non-parents, non-staff, same question. Here you see a plurality as well. 47% of non-parents, non-staff lean towards yes, 38% said no. While all that is instructive, I think that's all well and good, not all of those groups are the same size. There's vastly more non-parents, non-staff represented in purple than there are parents. So here what we've done on this slide is we took the same data, the same question, but now these previous slides that we had up, we're weighting their support based on how big each of those groups are. So what we're seeing here is about 1/4 of the Port Washington-Saukville School District, the community members within it, about 1/4 are parents. About 3/4 are non-parents, non-staff. Staff are very influential, but in the scheme of things, they just don't represent that many voters. So here we're focusing primarily on parents and non-parents, non-staff. So when we weight that support appropriately and carry this equation out, what this is telling us is if the Board of Education here put this on the ballot tonight, we would expect a little over 50%, 51.5% specifically, to support the referendum as described. It's just a little north of majority. Revisiting your question, what about the undecideds? A couple things about that. Staff, well, actually, so we have staff, 10% undecided, parents 14, non-parents, non-staff, 15% are undecided. I'll give you a way longer answer than what you were hoping for. One, that's actually a little lower than normal. I wouldn't have blinked an eye at all here had undecided been approaching the upper teens, even the lower 20s. That would have been very normal. So in this case, for the benefit of data clarity, most people have made up their mind, which is not a bad place to be because it's helpful for decision making. Had you asked me that same question about 5 years ago, you know, what do undecideds do? Do they break yes? Do they break no? To what proportion goes each direction? Had you asked me that when you were working on this building, it was about 1/3 that broke towards yes of the undecideds. About 2/3 broke towards no. Since that time, the amount that's breaking towards yes has steadily shrunk. When we did surveys, I don't know if this has anything to do with the pandemic, but when we analyzed the data in like 2020, 2021 or so, it shrunk to about 1/4 that broke towards yes, about 3/4 that broke towards no. Now, and this is hot off the presses, as of November of just this year, the presidential election, looking at all the elections in 22, 23, and 24, our best guess, which is actually a little bit highballing it, is about 10% will break towards yes, and about 90% will break towards no. So you will pick up some there, but more will break towards no than yes. Part of that is people know full well and good that they're going to tell you no, but in the Midwest, they feel like that's rude to tell you on a survey. We don't have that problem on the East Coast, but in Wisconsin and Minnesota, we do. Some people know they're going to tell you no, but they just choose undecided. But some, you know, this is the end of the year. People are wondering what their property taxes are going to do at the end of the year. Some people they want more detail, and that's not a bad place to be either. But in the scheme of things, think about a 90-10 breakdown in terms of the yes to no. But again, you do have fewer undecideds than what I would deem to be normal here, especially for your non-parents, non-staff. As you know, that wasn't the end of your survey. The next part up was some general direction on TJ. So the middle school will soon need a significant investment. So here we are, you know, kind of working down the facility plan that you've constructed. The COC studied options, recommends building a new middle school in the near future. But at the end of the day, you know, from a survey perspective, we need your input as the community. Here the data split a little bit. So in terms of advice, just looking at the Navy, so just isolating staff prefer to explore building a new school. The other two groups are looking on the left-hand side. Your parents, 43 to 35, support renovating or expanding the current facility. Non-parents, non-staff are even more supportive of that, to the tune of 47 to 18, renovating, expanding, versus exploring building a new school. Again, my eyes here tend to go to the purple folks first for no other reason than they're the largest group in the community. They will represent the most number of voters, but that doesn't mean that I don't take what staff and parents are certainly taking to heart. Here, though, I do, again, I look at the purple folks just because there's the most of them. So staff, again, leaning towards exploring building new. The other two groups, renovating, expanding, wins over the new school. And then finally, the swimming pool. So I talked a little bit about when it was built, roughly how often it's used, the general issues with the pool. And then same kind of deal. Before we make a plan, we need your input on what to do next. Here you got a pretty clear winner. Replace, beat closing. 66-20 for staff, 68-15 for parents, and just at 50% for non-parents, non-staff, but 50 is certainly above 22. Replace to close for your non-parents, non-staff. So here, your bars in the middle are a little bit more clear. Replacing the pool wins pretty handily over closing it. So, in sum, specifically looking at what you would think about potentially taking to ballot for this upcoming April, a weighted majority, 51.5%, support the Port Washington-Saukville School District pursuing a $66.7 million referendum to fund those maintenance and Saukville elementary projects that we talked about earlier on in the survey. So that's our take-home point. What questions do you have about the data, the takeaways, or any of the math that went into it?
Rob, real quick for the, just a point of reference for the middle school and the pool, we didn't test a dollar amount for either of those, so those were purely what would you prefer outside of a dollar amount?
That's correct. Clint's right. Yeah, at this point, it didn't have a dollar amount attached to it, partly because we didn't want to put the cart in front of the horse. You know, before we went too far down the path, I think, of planning, what is it that the community prefers us to do? But yeah, you're right. At this point, it wasn't a dollar amount attached to it.
I have one more question.
Absolutely.
So given that our standard error was 2.25, if we fall below that, that dips below 50%. In your expert opinion, is that concerning to you?
Well, I have two thoughts about that. So one of the things that I was going to bring up regardless is I actually did do the math. When you take over 10% of undecideds, I think you asked me the same question. It was around 55%, right? When you bring over the undecided. So that does bring you outside that margin of error of 2.25%. I don't think concern is the word that I'm looking for. I think at this point it is a close election. But I think people are still very early on in terms of how ready they are to think about it. There was a lot going on in fall and October and early November. I think attention will just be more focused now that as a community member, there aren't 38 flyers landing in my mailbox every single day in a swing state like Wisconsin. Attention will just be more focused. And you know, to be honest, most people won't be ready to think about it until February and March because folks are busy. But I think once you go out and have some of those community info sessions, those do go a long way to helping really understand what is it we're going to do, why, some of those walkthroughs of your facilities, and especially Saukville, to understand what's going on there and what would be replaced. I would say, especially over the last maybe calendar year or so, and I think, I know I'm going to just put words in Clint's mouth. He doesn't have a mic next to him, so I can say whatever I want about Clint. It's not common, I think, to see above majority support for projects right now. I mean, with interest rates being high, there were a lot that we were testing that was on the other side of that 50% threshold, you know, the 46, 47, 48. I think that's a harder place to be because it's like, well, do we make it a little cheaper? Do we try it, you know, and see what happens? So I don't know that it's all that common to get above 50% just in the survey at this point, especially at the time of year as people begin to think about their property taxes. So I would say just the education piece is not to be minimized, and I think that, you know, you certainly have support to put something on the ballot. At this point, I think the board's homework would be, do we feel good about where it is? And you're right, with that margin of error, it does make it very, very close. Do we trim it back a little bit? You know, and think about that tax impact. That's kind of the next step, I think.
Great,
Do you have anything you want to add to that, Clint, before I just put more words in your mouth? Okay, thanks. Yeah.
We did when we went to referendum last time, what, 8 years ago, 10 years ago?
2015.
Do you remember our preference at that point? It passed, obviously, here, but do you remember our numbers going into that?
Ooh, that might be a good question for you, actually. I don't remember.
Our survey data last time was far below this. So we surveyed a higher number for both projects, and then we sort of strategically calculated or came at the under $50 million mark, kind of for the number we thought that was going to pass. So we saw below 50% last time and knew we needed to make the project more affordable for people to get it there.
I'm not exactly sure how to word this question, but, so Port Washington, would it affect Saukville as well, the new facility that is, okay, so that would just be Port Washington, yeah, the safety building. Are you aware of that situation?
Just rumbling, so if anything you tell me will probably be helpful.
Okay, well, I don't know that I can speak to much more than $33 million was what the cover of the paper said. So this is something new that's not going, I'm looking at everybody to correct me if I'm wrong. This is something that my understanding today is that it's not going to referendum, that it's just something that is voted on by the aldermen. And it is obviously going to have a significant impact on the taxes for our community. And so does anybody have like a timeline in their minds about when this went out and when this new discovery or whatever you want to call it,
So
of the
Rob and I-
33?
Rob and I connected on this and talked about this today, and we created the timeline. We looked at when the Ozaki Press published their story, which was October 16th. In looking at our responses, we came up with about 2/3 of the responses of this survey. Most, if not all, of our staff were done before that article, but 2/3 of the surveys came in after the Ozaki Press broke the news of what the tax impact with the safety building would be.
Great, thank you.
On the question about advice you'd give for the middle school?
Yeah.
Have you, just from your experience, had situations where a similar question was asked about replacing versus renovating? And, you know, how that actually came out? Because I guess with the different groups having different advice,
Yep.
have you run into that, and how did it actually turn out? Or is it something that maybe we need to, because I guess I'm thinking like with the staff voting for a new school, and I would think they know more about what the school is really like. Would you think that communicating more about, you know, over time about what, maybe have tours of what the problems are, why we think we should go towards building something new on the same site possibly, but versus renovating? I'm just wondering if you have any experience in other situations there.
Yeah, so let me, I just want to repeat the question so I answer properly. So are you saying like when there's split data like this, how do people work with that?
Yes, and I guess I'm thinking that this would be possibly a common theme in schools, look at, you know, renovate where you're at
Yeah.
versus rebuild.
Yeah, and I think I'll rely on you here as well to see, you know, kind of after we step out what happens. I think, so let me put I'm a recovering high school social studies teacher, so let me just put that hat on for a bit. When I wore that hat, I was all about getting a new school. Like, yeah, sign me up. I'd love that for my own working conditions. I think, though, what you're seeing here is twofold. You're seeing that a little bit. I'd love to work in a new facility, but I think, you know, when you redid this building, it was kind of like that like new renovation, right? That's kind of how it was. So I think once staff also can see what the renderings would be like and just how much the new building could be improved, I think they do come around. I don't see it a lot where staff will dig in and say, especially for the staff that are going to work there, say, I'm only going to support building a new school, and even though I work there, I'm not going to support renovating it. I think usually staff will say, well, something's better than nothing, and if that's what the community supports, then I will go along with that. I think what you're seeing here is a little bit of blue sky. Sure, I love it. You know, I'll take it if I can get it. But I think the work that you've done in this building, I think people have experience with renovating and expanding, and they saw how well this building turned out, and can see, that might make sense. Maybe we can do some really cool things with that building, keep it where it is, and really do some good work in it. And I think that's familiarity that you're also seeing, especially for your non-parents, non-staff. So I guess the pointed answer to your question is, I think once numbers are attached, if you move forward with, say, a renovation option, and staff can see, especially the staff that work there, will see what happens to it, I think they will come over to renovate, just because that will make a significant impact in their day-to-day working conditions. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I would add one other thing too, and I think I'm going to go where you're going to go, Clint, but what is the instructional impact too?
Sure.
As we think about the time it took to rebuild this building and the amount of impact it had on instruction for students year after year after year, what does that look like to rebuild TJ? And I think our operations committee heard that could take a 3.5-year process to update TJ, whereas a new building would be off-site, not impact the day-to-day instruction during that time period. And so as we think about construction and what that does to the school learning environment, closing off spaces, dust, noise, et cetera, I think that could be a part of a next step discussion, that our staff is saying that, and what would the community say? And so that could be another discussion down the road, but I do think that's something to consider, is truly the instructional impact that a renovation has versus a new school.
Yeah, a couple things this tells me is if we, the board, continue and subsequent committees continue to favor the new build, we have a very, an uphill battle. We have to do a lot of justification for why we're going that way. The reason I asked Rob about the cost as well is the cost is going to factor into that for people as well too. Typically building new is going to be more than a renovate. But what are the trade-offs? What are we not getting in the renovation options? What to Michael's point, what are we causing our staff and students to endure during that process? So this tells me if we're going to go down that road, there's a lot of education and a lot of support for why we think that's best, that needs to happen. The case study for that was this building. We did survey new versus renovate, and in that case, it was very close. It was a $10 million gap to build new versus renovate on the survey. The community definitely showed support for renovate at that time, but also said it was too expensive. So again, to that point, we did have to reduce costs. I would say on the flip side, it's apparent that the community does support Saukville, building new. They understand the challenges and the need at that facility, and so just in your own district, I think you have good.
When you bring up the Saukville, I think a lot more was laid out about why.
Yeah, this was a very simple kind of
I get what you're saying. I'm just
planning. So
I'm just thinking we might have different results if we go forward and lay out more of the detail behind it.
And it's possible.
Yeah. We just did that. Actually, Bayfield survey is landing right now, and they need to potentially redo a school. So they made a recommendation. We recommend building new, but at the end of the day, we'll do whatever the community says, and it's not that much far apart. It's like 80% of the cost. And to renovate, they knew they'd have to be back in a couple of years for the stuff that they're not touching right now. So, as you make those plans too, how close are the renovation costs? What can be done in phases or what can't? And then I think you could still test the question, especially once people know, well, how close are they and what are the tax impact difference and things.
On the same token, too, the data on the pool, while it looks great and rosy, I mean, now you're like, hey, let's add this to this one. But I guarantee you, we put the dollar amount down there. Not that it's going to change people significantly, but some of those yeses are going to turn to no's when they see the cost for a pool. So that's why I think this is a great thing to help guide us. But I don't think this is also a definitive direction that absolutely this is what we're doing. It's just informing our planning processes.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but if I recall, what our plan is, based on the financial information that we received and about the payoff of the other things, is that we are currently looking at considering the Saukville and the renovations as what we're want to go to now, and that the middle school and the pool are a down the road. Thank you.
Everything you said is correct.
Yep.
But I would say from the planning purposes, within that 66.7, there is some money going towards TJ. So again, there's a short-term investment we are making in that facility because there is need, and it's need that can't wait, right, until we decide if we're doing one thing or the other. So That's just, one other piece of kind of taking that information and maybe feeling a little bit better that we are spending some money at TJ in the short term, knowing that there may be a long-term goal there.
Any other questions for these two gentlemen? So administration's next step in this process would be taking this to finance on December 9th as a in-depth discussion on, we've asked the question related to 66.7. Does the board feel we need to adjust that? Does it need to go lower? Like Clint had referenced at the previous survey through school perceptions, we ended up deciding to lower that cost for this building in Dunwoody. As it relates to deferred maintenance, we still have deferred maintenance. The fact that we've tested this question, administration is recommending taking those numbers to the next step at finance and bringing forth a possible referendum question on December 9th. That would then be full board approval on December 16th. But that's where we're at as far as next steps. Questions from the board on that?
One question, we had received comments as well. How are we going to incorporate that? Because there were several comments that came in where I thought we could maybe incorporate some of the ideas in communication through the beacon on what we are doing around some of those ideas.
Yep.
Or, yeah, I just think it's worth, making sure we do some communication around that.
Absolutely, the communication and the feedback that we received from the comments. School Perceptions gave us some themes around next steps related to that, so that will definitely inform our presentations that we go out into the community in February and March and into that April 1st date. That will help inform that. But absolutely, that helps to also then decide what those pamphlets and flyers need to look like when we send those out throughout the spring.
I have one more question. Remind me, the 66.7, that included money for purchasing land, right?
I think up to 1.2 million. I can check that, but I believe it was
A little more than that,
a little bit more than that, yes.
Okay,
And we're still currently just working through that process in Saukville right now.
okay. Thank you.
Awesome, so information only, no action, but we'll look to bring that to the next step on December 9th to finance with a possible referendum question being approved on December 16th. So Mel and I will work on that. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Clint, for being here.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just a thank you to the community and to our staff and for the results and for the turnout that we had for the actual answering of the survey. That's great, and it shows a lot of support for us, so, and for our children, so that's all great. We are going to move on to the school year calendar for 25-26 school year.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Your most dangerous part of your trip was right there. Off to Appleton. Yes, so we have bringing forward a 25-26 draft calendar for the board to review. Typical timeline is that this has been brought forth to the board in November. This helps to inform our discussions and planning as it relates to PD, as it relates to thinking about registration timelines, et cetera. So this is the initial draft. We worked with the union to get feedback on some of the dates and times. This reflects an 190-day calendar for staff. It is 173 instructional days for students, which is pretty normal from a year-to-year perspective. It does result in professional development days at the beginning of the year with 5. That's a slight difference than this year. This current year, we had 4. In order to get to 190 and make sure students are done by June 5th, which was part of our deal, part of our goal, I should say, there was really only a few ways to do this. There are 2 days embedded in this calendar that are essentially comp days for our staff for their conference time. They have parent-teacher conferences that night. And working with the union, we decided on January 2nd being one of those days, knowing that coming back for 1 day after winter break probably wouldn't be the best type of learning. So the other thing we really thought about was flow and having consistent days without breaking it up. The other day that we decided upon was November 26th, that day before Thanksgiving. So staff essentially have conferences in August, October, and in March, and then those days are comped out on those particular dates, January 2nd and November 26th. I think in working with the union, they referenced that Port Washington-Saukville School District led the way in turning that day before Thanksgiving into their comp day rather than that day after conferences. So those are the two comp days for that. The other thing that's unique from this calendar compared to last year is rather than coming back after Thanksgiving and having a PD day in December somewhere, we decided to add our December PD day right at the beginning, which actually extends the Thanksgiving holiday for students and families, but our staff would be back on December 1st. That was a goal also for the, the flow. So from December 2nd straight through December 23rd, we'll have uninterrupted instructional days. So I think those were some of the goals with this calendar, was to reflect flow, and so not necessarily breaking up 5-day weeks from PD perspective. So I would take questions on this and possible action if we want to move forward with this calendar.
What if we have snow days? Do we have a contingent plan for that?
Great question. So there's 3 snow days built in. That's really reflected on high school minutes. High school has the most need for minutes as it relates to instruction. We have a number of built-in days for elementary and middle school. They're never a concern. Usually we have 8 to 10 built-in snow days for elementary kiddos based on the state expectation for instructional minutes. But we have 3 snow days built in this year and 3 snow days built in next year, working with administration and having conversation on what that looks like for a 4th snow day. Hopefully we won't face that, but also talking about, is the best use of our time virtual learning, or would we switch out a PD day? Those are some things that we'll work through this year, but 3 is a pretty good start.
I have one question.
Yep.
Graduation looks early this year.
So graduation for this year's calendar, 24-25, is mirrored for 25-26. So we have moved graduation up a week earlier to reflect we're ahead of finals. This school year is the first year, Rachel, that we're doing that, correct? And then, so we haven't experienced it, but we are moving it forward to next year within that timeline.
Okay. Just seemed really early.
I believe it compares with other districts in the North Shore. We looked at Grafton, Cedarburg, Slinger, so comparable to the North Shore districts. Okay. Good question. It is different.
Do we think that that will have an impact on attendance for finals or anything like that? Okay.
The other unique thing with this calendar is really thinking about the front load discussion that we're going to have a little bit when we talk about the school report card and our goals connected around math and providing enough PD time for teachers to really understand what could be possibly a new math curriculum for next year. So that those 5 days in the front end will really support teachers to get them into that curriculum, if not prior to that, to understand how to implement it. It also then has 2 PD days on the end of the school year that could be for possible additions, adjustments to that curriculum, giving teachers time to reflect on a year worth of instruction as it relates to that. Was it something we need to shift and change? So a little bit different, but that was our one way to get 190 days and still have students done on June 5th.
I would like to note, I appreciate that the finals is no longer a week, that it is a 2-day window. That looks like very efficient, and also I appreciate that staff has, that day after Thanksgiving is a PD day, and that the January 2nd to have that, and as well as that's Easter Monday, I'm assuming, in April?
Yep.
Okay.
That's a CISA 1 kind of agreement between superintendents to have a consistent spring break that includes that. So all North Shore CISA 1 will have that to reflect your question about finals. Building the finals into our current block days was a goal. And as you relate to January 16th, the 16th will be kind of that teacher records day built in. And then the 19th, which is Martin Luther King Day, and we talked about finding a way for staff to also have that day off. That was an option. We could go to school on January 2nd and then have off the 19th. But we felt that we can, again, clump that 16th through 19th weekend, and the 19th will be a PD day. The 16th will be more semester records, grades, et cetera.
Excellent. Do we need motion on this? We do need motion. Is there any more discussion? Okay, I move to approve the 2025-2026 year-at-a-glance calendar.
I'll second.
We can do a voice vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I will turn it over to Stephanie then for the second and final reading of the revised board policy.
Yes, so the second and final reading of revised board bylaw 0160 meetings. We didn't make any changes from the first reading of this in October, I think was the first reading. So as a reminder, this is just kind of clarifying the procedures and how to sign up or register for public comment. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, then I motion to approve the second and final reading of the revised board bylaw 0160 meetings as presented.
Second.
And we'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Then I will turn it back over to Michael for the donation of $1,000 from B3.
Yes, so seeking approval for this donation, really making this a formal process to accept that donation. We heard from the group today, certainly willing to continue to partner with us moving forward. That's exciting. And so being good stewards and making sure we're thankful and accepting is really the goal of this process. So we hope for that motion to accept that donation.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to move to accept the donation of $1,000 from B3 towards the purchase of a new bass drum from the Thomas Jefferson Middle School Band Program, as presented.
Second.
It's a voice vote, but I also want to thank Nikki for your intervention. And so
And I'm friends with Mike's sister, and so, yeah, and I will let her know about this donation because they're not in the area anymore. I think it's wonderful.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and thank you to B3 again. And then we also have the acceptance of the donation of the 54 engines for the high school tech ed program.
Yeah, $21,000 worth of donations as it relates to new engines for kids to take apart and put back together. Really exciting opportunity for kids, so recommending a motion to approve those.
I'll motion to accept the donation of 54 new Honda engines from Engine Power Incorporated to the Port Washington High School Tech Ed program as presented.
I'll second.
And we'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Michael, do you know, where is Engine Power Inc. located? Is it a local business?
No, I think it's at Oconomowoc.
This grant was available for a number of schools, so they reached out to a number of schools across the state, and Rachel and her team put together the grant proposal, so.
It goes through our Perkins grant money, which we're part of the CISA one consortium with that. There's 23 or 26 schools, don't quote me on that one. And all we had to pay for was the shipping, which that grant money actually covered. So for $600, we got $21,000+ worth of things. So, and through grant money. Yeah, that's a total credit to our tech ed department, especially the Catholic for running with that, and Robin Bantinter for helping put in our receipts for Perkins, so I can't take any of that credit, but I'm glad we have them. They're very nice, and the old ones had been cranked down for like a decade, so you can imagine they were maybe missing some parts from being put back together over the years.
Great. Did we already do the voice vote? We did. Yes? Okay. Sorry.
I don't think we did on the engines.
I think we had a second, and then did I do the voice vote?
We did.
We did. Okay, thank you. And then accepting the donation from the Dunwoody Parent Group.
Yeah, so huge shout out to the Dunwoody Parent Group. I think if John were still here, he'd be excited from an athletic standpoint. I believe this is a basketball hoop, so this can.
That and an ADA accessible swing.
Yes. So accessibility and basketball, as well as the donation that I believe we'll bring next month to who is installing it. So we even had a parent that is a contractor that is willing to install both pieces of equipment as a part of a donation, so.
I'll entertain a voice vote. Oh, yeah, that's what I meant.
I'll make a motion to accept the donation of $3,757.10 from the Dunwoody Parent Connection for the purchase of playground equipment for the Dunwoody Elementary School as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will move on to the school report.
So I worked with Sarah Credit as well as our principals to work through this presentation, but knowing this is my former life, I said I wanted one more shot at this presentation in my new district, so thank you for Sarah letting me do this and humoring me on this presentation that I know very well from a different district. So timeline as it relates to our school report card, we talk a lot about school report cards, really as a way to reflect on the previous 3 years. It is truly an autopsy of 3 years worth of data to give us a report, a number. We talked a lot about that our students and our school is more than a score, but this is certainly a way for us to help shape how to change that score in many fashions. So just as a timeline, we received this data, we've seen this academic data this summer. It is embargoed until October 8th, but we also shared that data during our October board meeting. That is the forward exam, the ACT exam, the DLM, all of those numbers help to create the report card. We received internally the report card on October 3rd, 2024, so we created this presentation early in October, and so our staff have all seen this presentation, but it is embargoed until November 19th. The DPI has asked us not to share that with the board or the community until then, so you've seen the press release, but we wanted to dig a little bit deeper into the data tonight and share that with you. So what is on the school report card? It is all about student achievement, which is connected to ELA and math. Social studies and science is still important. It is not part of the achievement portion of this test score, though. That does mean forward, 3rd through 8th, pre-ACT, Aspire, and Secure 9-10, and then ACT in 11th grade. It also is a reflection of growth. Are our students growing from year to year on those assessments, and they have a system to be able to track that for us? The other component is the target group outcomes that I'll spend some time talking a little bit about, as that is very much an area of focus for us. And then finally, on-track graduation. As a system, are we graduating kids, or do we have indicators that show we're moving in the right direction? Here's an overall timeline of our school report card dating back to 13-14. That report card was based on No Child Left Behind. At that time, our district exceeded expectations, and shortly thereafter, we moved to ESSA, or Every Student Exceeds Act, and that is where the report card changed slightly. We still stayed at that exceeds expectations, and you can see that we had some up and down, with 18-19 being our highest school report card in the district at significantly exceeds expectation at 84.5. At that time, the state changed the report card again. They went from a group called Closing the Gaps to target group, and I think that really is a great reflection of really looking internally at our data. The closing the gaps was not, I guess, helping districts as much, so the last 4 years we've been able to look at that from a target group perspective. Our current score, 72.4, you can see has been a slow decline since 2020. 2020, 2021 would be that COVID interrupted year, so the data on this report card truly reflects 3 years worth of post-COVID data. So, our schools on how they reflect. As a district, we exceed expectations, but as buildings, we were proud to say Port Washington High School exceeds expectations. 2 of our elementaries significantly exceeds expectations. Saukville Elementary meets expectations, and then Thomas Jefferson meets expectations. So what that means from an achievement perspective, this is our district. And so as you think about all those areas I've focused on, they do that, they give us a district score, and then they also give us those same scores as a building. For 23-24, I think we can celebrate that we saw our score increase on a total score to 74.2 from the previous year at 74.1, still below our best year ever at 75.7, and that's on a 100-point scale. In the area of ELA, we tied or maintained our score of 76.0, and that's a celebration in that we implemented a new reading curriculum last year and did not see an implementation dip. And then we also saw our achievement score, or the amount of students achieving at the level of proficient and advanced, go to 72.4, both of those areas being above the state average. I've reflected basically the colors of green and red as areas that we saw dips or areas that we saw increases. So as it relates to achievement, the state report card is not intended to score or compare yourself to other districts. That was not the intent of the report card. It was truly to create strategic plan or a vision for your own district. However, recently it has become very clear it is a way to compare, and so as an achievement score, we are above 88.2% of districts in the state. So we are in the top 11.8% of districts as it relates to achievement. I think that's definitely a celebration, and achievement is something that we continue to do very, very well in this district. Our high achieving students are doing really, really well, and we're providing opportunities for those students. So certainly a celebration. As it relates to our buildings, I just put this as a score. You can see all of our high school, middle school, as well as our 3 elementary schools, and I've broken that down into total score, ELA score, math score, state ELA, and state math. Again, a celebration as it relates to achievement. We're above the state average in every single category, both ELA and math. But as you reflect, you can kind of see areas that we're higher. Are we higher in ELA? Are we higher in math? And what can we do to impact those particular scores? It's also interesting that we have 3 elementaries, and we can compare those 3 elementaries, Saukville being at an 80.2 in achievement, Lincoln at 82.4, and Dunwoody at 87.0, knowing that our teachers all receive the same professional development, have the same schedule, have a similar days of instruction. What is it that one school does differently than another school? That's called a professional learning community. We can help and grow and learn from what other buildings are doing as it relates to achievement. The next area that I would say is a celebration for our district is on-track graduation. You can see the total score, a slight dip from last year, and certainly not at that level of 91.9 from 2020, 2021. But on-track graduation is based on 4 categories. They're looking at our absenteeism and our chronic absenteeism. How are our students doing? Are they coming to school? The other component at the high school level, are we graduating students? The other key component of graduation or being on track is 3rd grade reading. If you are not reading at level by 3rd grade, you are more likely to live in poverty. And never read at level again. And so that 3rd grade reading score is a key component as it relates to on-track graduation, and we're held accountable to our 3rd grade reading scores in this category. And the other key component that's important as it relates to on-track graduation is 8th grade math or algebra ready. Are our students leaving middle school algebra ready? A huge bump from the previous year and our highest score ever as it relates to 8th grade math. Certainly a celebration. So as we compare across the state, we are in the top 18% of districts in the state of Wisconsin as it relates to on-track graduation. I would also say this is a thing that we do really well in the state, and you can see the columns very far to the right that many of our districts fall in that above 80 percentile. However, certainly proud of the fact that we're in the top 18%. Those are our areas of achievement and strength. You can then also see that each school has an on-track graduation score. Port Washington High School, 90.4. Their score is based strictly on chronic absenteeism and graduation attendance, or graduation, I should say. They're not held accountable for 3rd grade and 8th grade at their building. You can see TJ. Again, their score is based on absenteeism and attendance. What is their attendance rate? As well as what is 8th grade math. And then you can see our 3 elementary schools are held accountable for 3rd grade ELA. Next group, or next area that we're held accountable to is target group outcomes. To very simply put, our target group outcome score is comparing our bottom quartile students, our bottom 25%, to our top 3 quartiles, and are they growing at the same rate? Are our students that were on the bottom 25% as 3rd graders, are they growing as much or more than their peers when they take that 4th grade assessment? So they're looking at years and years of data to see how are our lower students on that bottom quartile doing compared to our other 3, and this is without a doubt an area of focus. We're achieving at high levels, however, our bottom quartile kids are not growing at that same rate. The one area that's a celebration within target group outcomes is graduation. Our students that are on that bottom quartile, we're providing opportunities for them to graduate, and that's our highest score, and you can see that's the highest score we've ever had. However, chronic absenteeism is down. Our students that are in the bottom quartile are more likely to be absent. They're less likely to grow in ELA and math. Their achievement is significantly lower than their peers that are in the top 3 quartiles, and that total score is reflected as the lowest we've seen in 4 years. So as it relates to target group, we are in the top 49% roughly as it relates to the state in target group. So Certainly an area of focus for us. Achievement and target, or in graduation is a celebration. Target group outcomes is an area that we need to focus on. You can then break that down into multiple areas. So in the area of ELA, our target group students achieved at a 33.6. Our non-target, those top 3 quartiles, they're achieving at a 92.6 score. So significant discrepancy as it relates to our bottom quartile kids and our high-level top 3 quartile kids. And there's an even greater discrepancy as it relates to mathematics. For growth, you can see we're fairly close, and that's kind of I guess, foreshadowing to our next area, which will be growth. Both of those scores are something that we need to focus on because we want all students to grow, and you can see the target group is even lower in mathematics, both in our target group and our non-target group in the area of math compared to ELA. And then also chronic absenteeism, you can see that from a standpoint of our non-target group, 92.1% as it relates to attendance, where our students that are in the bottom quartile from year to the next year are at 80.9. The one celebration within target group is our students are graduating. We're finding ways to get them credit recovery and doing work during summer school to help them graduate. You can see those target group scores. The one thing that you may have seen within that within the report cards that were released on November 19th, Lincoln Elementary School does not have a target group score, and that's reflected of that their subs group is not large enough. They had a small enough group of 4th and 5th graders the last few years that it didn't reflect a cell size of 20, so they did not assign Lincoln a target group score. They still have achievement, they still have growth, and they still have on-track graduation, but the size of Lincoln's last 2 cohorts did not reflect enough students to give us a score. You can see across the board, really a celebration for Dunwoody, and one of the reasons that they significantly exceeds expectation is their target score is doing really well, and they are finding ways to help those students grow. So how can we learn from that building as they're helping to grow students that are in the bottom quartile? Final area that we need to focus on is without a doubt growth, and this is related to all of our students. Are our high achieving students growing? Are our students that are on that bottom quartile growth target group, are they growing? You can see as it relates to math, for a number of years, the last 3 years, those 3 years we've been below the state average as it relates to growth in the area of math. In the area of our total score, we went down, and math also growth went down. I guess that's not reflected with the score, but certainly how are our students growing through the system and how are we supporting them? So we are in the top roughly 43.2% of student, or 43.2% of districts in the state. The state also puts this in with a 0.6 value added score, and what they're saying is your district providing value for students that remain in the district in ELA and in math? They then break that down into subgroups, and as it relates to ELA, our district is providing value in every subgroup, and you can see we had 1,355 students assessed the last 2 years across that continuum that stayed here, were full academic years for 2 years in a row. And those students we are providing value as it relates to ELA. And you can see every subgroup down the line is providing value, with students with disabilities being the one area of focus for ELA. So certainly a celebration as it relates to growth in ELA, but that one subgroup focusing on what strategies we can put in place. A different story as it relates to mathematics. This is a trend for the last 3 or 4 years, that we are not providing value as it relates to mathematics growth in our system. Students are not growing at the same level as other students in the state and other students and their peers across the state. Every subgroup is below the state average as it relates to value added. We saw this data in October when it was released to us. We also saw this data as it was released this summer, and we've already put things in place to make sure we impact this moving forward. We simply can't wait. I wouldn't say it's a crisis, but it's certainly an area of focus that we have to think about moving forward. Just a way to show what that looks like, you can see value added being last year's assessment. Students are growing at a faster rate than the average student, and we are doing that in ELA. The story, however, for math, as we look across the state, our students are growing at a slower rate in math. Ultimately, are we going deep enough into standards? Are we providing opportunities in the area of mathematics to push our students with high rigor? And so simply put, we've already put in place since October 8th a math audit that has reviewed our practices, our instruction, and our resources, and will come forward on December 9th with an update on what we can do for math instruction, if not this spring, without a doubt for next school year. And so we'll be able to share that audit and some of the findings as well as possible course changes we can bring forward for next year. Also, we need to continue to work on the implementation of our reading curriculum. A huge shout out to our principals, our staff, our teachers, everyone that has put a tremendous amount of time and energy into learning our new ELA curriculum to make an impact that is very evident in our data and something that we can celebrate. So ultimately, the report cards bring celebrations as well as areas of focus that we have already started to work on. That's the district side. You can see the growth as it relates to all of our buildings. I want to take any more time. I wanted to give each building a chance to come and talk about their building report card just for a couple of minutes on some of the things that they're seeing and noticing and some of the work that they're already doing. Start with the high school first. Yes, high school first. We also included this. I'll turn it over to Rachel, but the district report card also tells us how we're doing as it relates to AP courses.
You can stay right there.
Dual enrollment, industry recognized credentials, and work-based learning. I know Rachel's passionate about this work. I've already heard her talk about this a couple times being here in Port Washington-Saukville, and I know she's already starting to do work on this.
I'd say this is like maybe my most passionate work right here, and I look forward to the day that this will become part of the scoring of our report card. Just to note that that does not count towards our 70.5 score, but just some already celebrations as we start to pull data for next school year already. Keep in mind that the data that's pulled for our career readiness is actually from 22-23. So our snapshot that we'll pull for the report card will be on December 10th of this year. We'll pull for next year's card. So this part is almost a full another year behind because they make sure that you've got all of your numbers in there following a school district. So for instance, I'm jazzed because I can tell you right now that our dual enrollment's going to go up by almost 10%. So, and that's been a very concerted effort by people in this building to reach out to our institutions, whether that be MATC, UW-Oshkosh, or a variety of other folks to see are there ways for us to offer those options for students. I want to give a huge shout out to our technical education area. Taylor Last has been the person who's really put in our Act 59 credentials over the years here. We're +9 in those in the next snapshot that we'll see, so that's really exciting. And then, believe it or not, it's really important what you put in Infinite Campus. The state pulls from there, and if you don't have it coded correctly, it won't come back, knock on your door and say, hey, did you actually mean to have things in there? And so working very closely, Chris Hess, our registrar and MVP, to make sure that we've got those coded correctly, as well as Jeff Wojcik and our counseling team. So big shout out to a lot of people that make sure that this happens. Then I've been told that I get 91 seconds to talk. Nick, you probably got me on the clock. All right, so things that are positive. We are up 2.5 percentage points. This is the highest score on the report card in my tenure here. This is absolutely a shout out to our kids, but our staff really digging into our skip work over the last 2 years. You'll see in terms of achievement, Michael spoke to that. We do well as a district in achievement. We do well as a district in those growth score areas where you see us doing better than 2/3 or better of the state. It comes down to our target groups. And I've already talked about the post-secondary piece on there, so I'm just going to focus on area growth real quick when it comes to target groups. So we've gone to NextPath, and really leveraging data to see where those students are and how we can support them is crucial. I think that that has some opportunity as we go forward to say what should our student learning objectives and professional practice goals look like for staff. How can we dig into that work a little bit more? And so that's something I look forward to talking with our team leaders about and ways that we can really leverage the work that we do with kids. Additionally, I would say with that, the math audit is huge. And I have a feeling that's just the beginning to make sure that we have the resources in the hands of our staff to help support our students. To ask them to find it from scratch is difficult and then align with standards. So credit to Sarah and Michael for the work that we've started to do with that as well. Nick, you're going to talk about win time, I think. I don't want to steal your thunder, but we have resource here. So how do we target that? Meaning, how do we make sure the right students are signed up for the right extra supports? That could be another way for us to focus on our target group area. We're doing okay, but that's where the biggest bang is for our buck. And I have a bleeding heart, which means every kid, all means all. So how do we help all of our students reach their greatest potential? That's our mission statement, and that's the group we need to focus our attention and time on. And I'm confident if we do that, the whole building's going to rise. Rise the ship, right? Tides rise the whole ships. Something like that.
For the record, I don't know what she was talking about. Good evening, everybody. Really quick, just to kind of segue into the report card, I always like to preface it by saying that although it does give us some great data and some things to grow on, it's just a snapshot of an entire school year and all the great and fantastic work that goes into working with our kids here in Port Washington-Saukville School District and all the great things that all the teachers do on a daily basis doesn't show up on these data points. But kind of the points of pride for TJ are definitely our achievement score, and I think that's going to be a consistent theme across all the schools here. Our schools our students are high achievers. 75.8 puts us 86.8%, in the top 86.8% in the state. So that's a pretty huge win for the students at TJ and all the teachers that work with those students. Our ELA achievement score was 78.8, which was consistent from the previous year, which was also a shout out to all my great ELA teachers who were given their new resource, just weeks before the new school year started, and that we did not see any dip in achievement with our students, grades 5 through 8. So shout out to all my ELA teachers at TJ for that. But it is well above the state average of 58.1. Another huge point of pride, as Michael has talked about, is that on track to graduate 90.2, which puts us in the top 90th percentile in the state. And as those data points that we touch base on at TJ is that 8th grade math score. So those are the points of pride at TJ. As we notice the areas for growth, and another theme you will probably hear consistently from all the buildings is that math audit that is taking place. All of our subgroups fell short of that 3.0 typical growth target that was mentioned in some previous slides. So every subgroup at TJ did not hit that typical growth rate, which is definitely an area of growth for us. Whereas in ELA, I think all but 2 met that typical growth target. And the big gap that exists with our target groups, so the students in the lower 20th percentile and those students that are non-target students, that gap is pretty significant at TJ, with it being 60 in ELA and 65 in math. So once again, our focus at TJ has really been around providing those opportunities to support those students that are in that lower 20th percentile, making sure we're utilizing our win time, so what I need, what a student specifically needs, and making sure that students are getting that within that 33-minute window that we have every single day built into our schedule to make sure that we are boosting those achievement scores with those students. Yep.
Hi, everybody. All right, lots to be proud of at Dunwoody, and again, a big shout out to our staff and students for an exceptional several years in a row. We fell in the significantly exceeds expectations category again. A celebration is that our achievement scores, growth scores, and target group outcome scores were all within the top % of K-5 schools in the state, and then our on track to graduation being within the top 20%. Our value added scores for all of our student groups also were actually at or above 4.0, with 3.0 being the average score. So a little better than what we're seeing district-wide, but definitely something to celebrate. And as Michael said, how can we learn from one another, and what Dunwoody is doing the past years, share that and see how we can support our other schools. Still things to work on and continue to make sure we at least maintain. We want to work on shrinking that gap between the target group and non-target group in ELA and math achievement. So the gap between those two, the target and non-target group, was biggest in our achievement scores. Our growth was actually less, which is something to celebrate, but how do we boost that achievement? And we're looking at better incorporating a PLC, especially involving our special education population. Sometimes I think it's perceived like they have special ed, all right, now they're kind of like out of the mix, but really we need to be talking about those students and their growth and achievement throughout the year, just as much as we do our general education students. And then ensuring our minority students are growing. Again, so same type of thing, looking at those students within our PLCs and our data meetings and making sure that we have things in place to support them and their growth. And then continuing to enforce our attendance policy. You'll hear from Jay and Jane. That's something we've been talking about lately. How do we set a precedence of the importance of attending schools at the elementary level and early on, so that that becomes habitual and an important part in families getting students to school.
it's always fun to come talk with all of you. I have the privilege of, having been here, well, the longest, I think, as far as the administrators go. And I know all the hard work that's gone into just building those systems that we can rely on. We're very proud, and I have a lot of people, too, to give a shout out to, besides just our teachers, but our specialists, as far as our teaching and learning strategists, our strategist assistant, our school psychologist. We meet regularly with our grade level teams and PLCs, really refining systems, constantly looking at data. And I'm very excited to say that we've had significantly exceeds expectations for the 6 straight years in a row, and 7 out of the last 8 years. In 2016, 2017, we did exceed expectations, but we're continuing always to review what we do, and especially focusing on that lower quartile of students. We want to make sure that we're growing those kids significantly in order for them to grow minimum of a year in a year's time, but we also have some catching up to do with some of those students. LES ranks in the top 17.6% of all K-5 schools in achievement, and the top 8% in on track to graduation. In the area of achievement, our ELA score is 20.3 points, and our math score is 21.3 points above all K-5 schools in the state. So again, that really shows that consistency, having systems in place, reviewing data, making adjustments, and not waiting weeks and weeks and weeks when we see a child needs something. We're really always looking and always trying to give every student what they need. For areas of growth, our economically disadvantaged students are not quite performing at the level of our current, category of white students. So we really, again, are focusing on that bottom quartile. We maintained our database intervention and enrichment groups. We're always continuing to build and grow in that area. Our growth score a few years ago was actually 100% in the top 3% of the state. And now we're revamping systems again. You can see without with our kind of strange pie chart up there, with only over 50% was actually an achievement score for us this year. So we didn't really have all of the areas or priority areas measured. As Elise alluded to, we're really working hard as an elementary team. That is a link in there of our attendance policy for your review if you'd like. It is in our handbook. We are communicating it to parents. We're bringing it back up frequently with staff. Our admin assistants are working closely with us to ensure that we're communicating, our staff members are communicating, and we're really pushing hard to have either, those phone calls made or those in-person meetings with parents to really continue those connections so that we continue to bring kids to school. Because when we can bring kids to school, we can do great things with the staff that we have. So.
Was wearing a holiday outfit.
I was. I changed.
I'm bummed
because,
that it's not long.
for the occasion. I had the hat and everything. And for the record, he totally knew what she was talking about. So anyway, okay. So a couple points of pride. We did go up in a couple of areas. We had a slight increase overall in our score from 64.6 up to 65.4, which is great. We also had some increase in our target group growth as well. And as far as achievement, we toed the line. And our growth score went up, total score as well as our growth in math. We did see some slight gains. We rank in the top 25th percentile in many of the areas on the report card, so that's also a point of pride. We exceed the state average in on-track to graduation categories like chronic absenteeism, school-wide attendance, and third grade English language arts. We have some glaring areas for improvement. And so what is fascinating by this and diving into the data, it's just, we want to know kind of where the data is coming from, right? And so when we look at that growth score, we're really looking at one cohort of students. How did the fourth graders perform this year compared to how they performed last year? So really that one cohort is what we look at for a total growth score. And we fall short in the growth category. Saukville Elementary is currently in the lowest 3.4% in the state when it comes to growth. So again, a glaring area for us to improve upon. Our target group outcome puts us in the lowest 9.6% in the state as well. So not only are our students not growing, but then again, that lowest quartile that we've been talking about are underperforming at a level that puts us in the bottom 10% of elementary schools in the state. All of our subgroup categories in both ELA and math fell short by a full point or more of the typical 3.0 growth. So again, we're seeing that we're not growing our students to the rate that other schools in the state are as well. And then similar to what Nick had talked about, that gap between that he was seeing in ELA and math at the elementary school, we're seeing that big gap as well between our target group and our non-target group by more than 55 points in both ELA and math. So we've really worked hard to kind of figure out what we need to do to take some steps forward. We put some good processes in place. We're looking at rebooting our PLC, professional learning community, where we're bringing data consistently to teams and having teams of teachers and staff talk about our students so we can progress monitor very closely where we're at. That PLC model and our EMLSS model are essential structures that we need to have in place so that we can, again, continue to maintain an eye on what we need to be doing, because I believe that we probably didn't have a great understanding before of where this data was coming from and what it represented. So that first thing is kind of turning on the lights to show everybody where we're at, to kind of create this sense of urgency to change some of the data that we have in front of us. That new math audit that we're looking at, I think, is also a huge step forward for us when we're looking at how we perform statewide compared to math as well. So it's a heavy heart, that I bring some of this data with you, but we do have some things in place that we're looking at seriously, what we're doing and trying to make some changes to get some better outcomes moving forward. So.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, principals. I think the one thing that I've learned through this process is our teachers, our staff, our principals are very connected to this data. When they see it, they take it to heart. They also take it into action and have already put things in place. So I'm proud of the work that they've already done since they saw this data, since we shared the report card. We know we have to do better for our kids and for our community in many areas, but we also have to take the time to celebrate. So we've done that. We've celebrated our achievement, and now we're already working forward, working towards next steps and strategies to improve that. So I think you heard that. I hope you heard that from our team. I'm excited the direction that we're following, that we're going. So take any questions that you have tonight related to the report card.
I have a general question on how something is developed. The priority area weights, how are those determined and why is it different from group to group?
So as far as the
Like to come up with that overall score, you have the 4 priority areas that are weighted and the weights are different by school, by...
Yep, so reflected in this quadrant of priority is really based on your percentage of free and reduced. So the more poverty that you have in your district, the more weight this graph is on growth. So if you're a district with very little poverty, they're basing all of your triangle, or I should say half of your triangle, on achievement, that if you do not have a number of low socioeconomic status students, that you should be achieving at higher levels. So for example, Dunwoody has 33.1% economically disadvantaged. So their achievement is weighted at 26.2. And then if we go to the next one can't do Lincoln, sorry. If we go to Saukville, their economically disadvantaged is 25.9. So their achievement is higher weighted.
That makes sense.
And so that changes by building, and it also changes by the district. Mm-hmm. So our district has a different weight, and all of that's calculated annually different. Good question.
I have a question. So specifically related to Saukville and the discrepancies that we see with the other 2 schools. I understand it's a snapshot. I know that we have fantastic teachers and leadership there and access to the same materials. I'm wondering if, aside from just maybe a cohort that's a little underperforming, if there are any other explanations or if there's anything else we can do to support Saukville specifically.
It's a great question. I brought it back to the achievement discussion that Lincoln, Dunwoody, Saukville are all within the same realm of achievement. You know, they're 2 points behind in total score for achievement. You fast forward as it relates to target group, and that's where we start to see this discrepancy. So how can we meet the needs of our bottom quartile students, specifically at Saukville, knowing that they have the same special ed resources, they have the same professional development, they have the same teachers? I certainly can speculate it might have something to do with what we talked about with school perceptions and a need for impacting that building and the structures that we provide for students. We have to provide them the workspaces, the learning spaces that they can grow in, and I would argue that we are one of the few districts, as Jay referenced, we're in the bottom 3% as it relates to growth. I have to think we're one of the few districts that has an open concept building. I do believe it impacts instruction. The staff believes that it impacts instruction, the ability for students to stay engaged in a lesson, and also to be able to pull students out and do small group learning. There are not a tremendous amount of spaces. As you see new buildings being built, they're adding breakout spaces for students to collaborate and do small group learning. I would hypothesize, being new and speculating my experiences in those 3 buildings, that is significant.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I would think especially an open concept would be harder on the target group. So, yeah, I mean, the data shows too.
Without question.
I'd just like to add, you know, in this very room, we hear noise in the hallway and we go and close the door, and we're adults who should be able to pay attention and, you know, think of those students in that open learning environment and the distraction that is constantly going on, and how that affects them. Thus, the reason that we are possibly going to referendum, because those kids deserve the same spaces that our other elementary schools have.
And I would say the other thing that we look at as those students transition from our elementaries to middle school, those same students, we can start to track, are they progressing? Are they growing more once they launch into that 5th grade environment? I mean, that's the other thing that I brought up is growth, that we can see pretty consistent growth scores between 62 and 87.9, with Saukville being a very clear outlier. Once our students have the opportunity to go to TJ and go to the Port Washington High School learning environment, does that also change? We can certainly look deeper at that data.
I'm just curious about, and correct me if I'm wrong, the attendance policy that you're enforcing and how that's working. I've been trying to find it and I'm not able to, and I didn't click that link, but I'm just curious, like, what specifically are you doing? Is there like follow-up with school counselors? Is there?
Well, in elementary, we don't have school counselors. So basically, the teachers have certain guidelines at each step. And then of actually reaching out, if there's a no-show for a couple of days and we don't have any contact, we're making phone calls. I'm making phone calls. Our admin assistant's making phone calls. We're talking about it. We meet with Jason Bergen, Officer Bergen, and Anna Bluma. At Lincoln, we meet every Thursday. And if somebody is falling on that radar of having a chronic issue, we've actually had whole team meetings with parents and families, had them come in and work with them, you know, to solve problems or get them assistance that they need to make sure kids are coming to school. So we just have a little more systematic approach, so we can be consistent and regular with it, and everybody knows what their role is if a child hits certain numbers of absences or tardies.
Well, and what we did too, and shout out to Brian Sutton for kind of leading us through this, is when we took our handbooks, we saw that there's some differences in what we were all doing. So that policy really helps us to all be on the same page, to all go through the same steps, to all kind of do the same interventions for attendance. So if anything, it's created consistency amongst all these schools.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can I ask a question kind of related to that? I know we don't have a school social worker in the district, but we have access to one, right? Do they help you all with absenteeism issues?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak a little to it, Jody, from the secondary level. We meet once a week with what we call our school resource team, which includes Officer Bergen, Anna Luma, who we're contracted with as a Ozaki County social worker, our counseling team that we do have, our school psychologists. We have a very systemic approach and are issuing truancy tickets if we get to that level, which is never the goal. We got lots of steps before that, but certainly we want kids at school to go down the rabbit hole of social workers in a more full-time lens, but that's not for me to say. What I will say is this, though, is they're pretty saturated in their system too, and there's been quite a bit of turnover at the county level. So we're really blessed and fortunate to have the time that we do have with Anna, and she's certainly an unbelievably great resource. But they too have just seen some turnovers and have a pretty saturated system currently.
It's great because Anna works K-12 with us.
She's fantastic.
She's in all of our buildings. She knows the buildings, she knows our policies, she knows our students, so it's great to have that one person, that two-point person.
Jason's great. I mean, Jason will take home visits with our APs and try like heck to get them here. If we can get them here, good things will happen. And by and large, we get them here, but there's always room for growth. We don't want any kid not being here.
And I would just say I've been working with Kim Faulkner at the county. We are going to increase the amount of time that we're contracting with them in the new year. So we'll look at having some more time because we feel like there's a need. So we're appreciative that the county is looking at doing that with us.
Does that mean more hours with Anna or somebody else?
Probably with someone else. Yep. Because Anna does all of the youth justice as well, and she's really good at that. So.
And I shouldn't speak for their system being inundated, but she wears a lot of hats.
Other questions? Thank you for letting us present the data.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all our administration. That's a culmination of an awful lot of hard work by an awful lot of people. And I love to hear that while we look at overall test scores, we're more concerned with the individual children and how it affects every single one of them. So thank you all for your hard work on behalf of each one of those individual students. And I'm very excited for the math audit and what that will bring us in the future. And we're moving in the right direction, and it'll be great when we're all moving on with hopefully an improved math curriculum. And thank you all very much for being here tonight, too.
Yeah, I'd just like to say also, thank you for presenting it so thoroughly and in such an easy way to digest it when there's so much information. Because every time these come out, you look through them, and it's a lot, and you all made it easy to understand. Thank you.
Great. Correspondence, there is one card here for everybody to sign before they leave tonight. And if there is nothing else, we will adjourn this meeting, and then we will take a motion to move into closed session.
Motion to adjourn to closed session per Wisconsin Statute 19.85 for the purpose of reviewing standard response protocol, drill evaluation data, and Wisconsin Statute 19.85 for the purpose of considering superintendent performance evaluation data.
I will second. Ms. Karen?
All right, and roll call to go in closed session. Karen?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Kirsten?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
Elisa?
Aye.
And Yvonne?
Aye.